A situation has come up with my electric car, and I have to change the battery configuration that you see here in the front of my car into something that looks like this. Stick around and I'll show you how I did it. This is one of 40 lithium-ion iron phosphate cells that I use to drive my electric Volkswagen. I've taken it out of the car, and I'll show you why here in a minute. But I wanted to give you an idea of the size of these cells. So you see, we have a cell here that's about 5.5 inches deep here. It's between 8 and 9 inches high. By the time we get connectors and everything on top of it, it's almost 10 inches high. And about 2 3/4 inches thick. I'll show you what our problem is here. This cell right here is a perfectly good cell, one of the 39 that are in the car that's doing fine. If I put my meter on that, you'll see that we have right now 3.32 volts. If we move over and look at this cell, well, it's pretty much dead. I've carefully tried to recharge this cell, put the whole car on a charger, running very low power into the cells, and I've been able to gradually bring a little bit of voltage into this cell, a couple volts. Usually by the time I check it the next morning, it's dead again. The cell is ruined and has to be replaced. So that leaves me with a dilemma. I have 40 cells in my car, which gives me a little over 144 volts. I think the car would do fine with only 36 cells. So I'm going to remove 4 cells and reconfigure how I have them laid out and try running the car on 36 cells. I know that's going to work. I had a problem with another cell that was discharging rather quickly. It was in a group of 4 that were banded together. I jumped over it and have been driving the car with only 36 cells quite satisfactorily. Now it's a matter of taking all those things apart. You can see I've got cells already out of the car, and I'm going to put another batch of 4 in, but I need to make sure that I know which one of those 4 is the one that I think is going bad, so that I create a new bank of 4 that is all good cells. And then I'll have some spare cells left over. I'll have an opportunity, though, to return this cell and the other one, which is going bad, to the place where I bought them, because they are still covered under warranty. So we'll see how that goes. Cross that bridge when we come to it. I've got a little bench project running here. I've taken 4 cells out of my car. Several months ago, I noticed that one of these cells was discharging much faster than all the others. And so I charged them up, and then I jumped over them and drove the car for several months using 36 cells instead of 40. Now that I'm deep in a project of reducing the number of cells and getting rid of a cell that's completely dead, I want to take one of the cells from this batch to replace the dead one, but I couldn't remember which of these cells was the one that I was having trouble with. So I put together this little bench test to see if I could figure that out by running a load on the group for several hours. Now, the reason I am able to know that I was having trouble with an individual cell, 1 out of 40, is because I'm using a system developed here by Rich Redman at Manzanita Micro. And this system monitors each cell and reports back what's going on. This board right here communicates through to a display that I have on the dashboard of my car. This one unplugs, comes off there, and I want to show you this here. This you'll see on top of my battery pack. This board makes it easy to hook up the controller that measures everything about each cell. And on the back of it, underneath, she's got these copper strips all set up so that it takes care of bridging the gaps, connecting all 4 batteries in the pack that I have to create one battery that will put out about 14 volts. To figure that out, I decided to run a little bench test. I put a load on the cells using an air compressor from my truck, ran it for several hours, and then I took measurements of the voltage of each cell. So you can see I've put this board from Manzanita Micro on top of these cells. That connects them all together for me, gives me a voltage of around 14 volts. Take this meter now, put it over here where you can see it well, and let's see what we're getting across the top of this thing. If I start over here, we'll see that we're getting about 3.29 volts out of that cell. Over here, the second one, 3.29 as well. On the third one, we're only getting 3.21. It's dropped much lower. And on the last one, it's 3.28. So, there, 3.29. So, with these 3 cells all being 3.29, and this one over here being much lower, I'm pretty confident that this is the cell that has been giving me trouble. And I have a recollection now, even though it was months ago, of it being in this position when I was testing it originally. So I'm pretty confident that this is the cell that was causing us the grief. Oh, and just to show you, I'll put the meter on the whole bank, and we'll see where we are right now. A little over 13 volts. So that's almost like a 12-volt battery there, but it's actually 4 lithium cells. Well, now I know which 2 cells are going to go back to the dealer for under warranty. We've got this cell right here, which we know is weak, this weak cell here, and then, of course, the dead cell that I showed you earlier. I will be taking one of these other 3 cells out of this pack right here to fill in the gap of the dead cell. So I'll still have the 24 cells that are in the original rear deck. That'll be everything that we have there. Then I will take the 16 cells that I have in the front deck and pull one batch of 4 completely out, and I will only have 3 batches of 4, so there'll be 12 cells in the front. That gives me 24 cells in the back and 12 cells in the front. I'm going to run the car on 36 cells, a little over 120 volts, and I think it'll be working just fine. Here's a look under the hood where I currently have the 16 cells already set up. You can see that I've networked them all together, that the Manzanita control boards are all hooked up here. Things are kind of running along at this part. I've disconnected the entire circuit in the rear pack. Although I have some meters over here, these 2 meters are analog meters, and they are reading 0 because the circuit is open at this point in time. The meters are redundant because I have a digital display that I use in the dashboard. Now, I'm going to pull one of these sections out here, and it will replace the one that I had on my bench when we were doing the demonstration there, so that I'll still have the full 24 cells in the back. Then I'll take the remaining 3 packs here of 4, and I'll rotate them and line them up in here. So that'll be quite a bit of work attaching them, and this is all attached solid to the frame of the car. These meters, as I said, are redundant, and I'm going to take them out. They're connected to a shunt, which I'll show you in another angle shot over here. And I'm going to probably put those up for sale on eBay. I don't need them anymore. But if you're building an electric car yourself and you'd like to have a set of meters and the shunt to go with them, go ahead and email me at my email address here, and maybe we can make arrangements to get them to you. And if someone's already taken them, there'll be some sort of a display across the screen at this point telling you that they're no longer available. But if we can get them to somebody that can make good use of them, that's something I would like to do. Here's a view of the charger that's mounted right in front of the battery pack here that's in the front compartment of the car. It's a Manzanita charger, and here again you can see the cabling that handles all the smart stuff that goes on. I've got a cord here that you can see I can plug it into an ordinary 15 amp socket right there, put an extension cord on it. If I want to, this will come apart and I can hook it directly up to 220 volts for a quicker charge. I can have a 15 amp charge or a 30 amp charge, so that works pretty well. You'll see the high voltage sticker sitting here. A little bit of a story on why that's upside down. When I originally installed this in the car, this was facing the other direction, and that was right side up. But then I realized that I need to kind of see the lights that are displayed here when I'm charging and know what's going on. And over on this side of my garage, I have a man door. And if I'm sitting up on my deck enjoying a beverage in the evening while I'm charging my car, I could actually see the status LEDs on this display and know what's going on if I turned it around. So I have done that. It makes it much more convenient, and my high voltage sticker is upside down. Looks like we've got a plan here anyway. So I'll tear all this stuff out of here. We'll move 4 of these cells to the rear deck, put 12 of them back in here. So stick around. We'll see what happens next. Don't go away. And so with a little bit of video magic, we end up with something that looks a little bit more like this. Well, let me give you a real quick tour of what we've accomplished here. Obviously, you'll see that these battery banks that I have here have been rotated 90 degrees. And we have 3 sets of 4 cells here instead of the original 4 sets of 4. I've also moved the charger up to this space over here. I've added a lot of carpeting throughout this area, which will make things look a lot nicer, and I've gained a bunch of cargo space in this area back here, which is convenient. Now, so you understand what's holding these cells in place, I removed the original gas tank from the car and took 3/4-inch piece of plywood and bolted it in to the very same place that the gas tank was. And that's what creates the angle that you see here, because it's sitting on the frame of the car and it's bolted down very securely. Then the original cells were bolted to that piece of plywood with strong aluminum bars below the plywood and at the top of the assembly as well. In doing this modification, I tried to take advantage of as much of the work that I had previously done, the fittings that were already in place, and use as many of the components that I'd already made to make this as a quick and easy project. In doing so, I put these cells here at this edge in the same place that we were before. So I was able to use most of the brackets that were already there. I had to add one new one here. Now this created a problem in that I have everything to this side a ways, and it makes a very, very tight fit for the charger right here. One of the consequences of using the original brackets and bolts from the first assembly is that I have only a limited amount of space on this side of the battery pack, and I chose to do that rather than redo so many things underneath here. But I was able to get the charger into this position as long as I elevated it so that I could get around part of the bulge in the fender well. So that worked out pretty good. A side effect of this, though, which is really convenient, is that the space underneath this elevated charger is giving me room to store and hide a lot of connectors and run cables. So I only have the power cord for the charger out here in front right now, and everything else is underneath and behind, which makes for a very tidy appearance. This switch that you see here is a new addition to the project. It allows me to completely open the main circuit, which will be very handy. I use the car during the spring and the summer and the fall, but in the winter, because I don't have a heater and I don't have a defroster, the car sits for a long period of time without being used. There's a residual drain on the batteries, which I'm concerned about because we don't want to over discharge these cells, and I might not be paying close enough attention to it, especially if I'm traveling. This doesn't really turn the load on and off. The load is controlled by a contactor at the rear of the car. This switch doesn't arc or anything like that because there's no load on it, but it'll be real handy to be able to turn that circuit on and off, especially when I'm working on it. That way I don't have to worry about sparks and things that occur sometimes when you're connecting cables up to the tops of batteries. I think this will be a great addition, and I'm glad it's there. Even though I've left the switch in the open position, I have one cable here that is still not connected. It'll be the last one I connect. I'm going to go work at the other end of the car for now, but this will go here. It's the negative lead from the front set of cells that goes to the cells that are in the back. This is welding cable that I'm using here, and you should be able to notice right here that I have some blue tape on the end of this cable. This color coding is important. It makes it very easy for me to be sure that I'm getting a hold of the right cable at the right place when they run through the body of the car and they're accessed at opposite ends. Well, that almost finishes the front battery compartment. That's all good to go. Now it's time to put the rear deck back together. I had to remove these 4 cells that you see over here in order to get the one bank out that contains the bad cell. So those will go back where they belong. I'll take one of these good cells. It will fill the gap left by the cell that's completely dead. Then we should be able to get this back in the road. Here's a short clip of what the back end looked like before we started this project. You can see the jumper there that I used to bridge over the cells where I knew I had a bad cell. And then this first cell in the lower left corner is the one that's completely dead that has to be replaced. Now that all the cells are hooked up, let's take a quick little test run. Let's just go for a short ride, try this thing out, now that we've got the batteries back in. We'll just go down here, turn around, and come right back. Feels good. Good pickup. Rolling right along. Back on the road again. forget to subscribe, like, and share.